Okay.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Beverly School Committee's Committee on Instruction and Student Life. Today is December 11th, 2024. We are meeting in a hybrid remote model using a remote meeting application, allowing for remote participation and for public access to the open portions of our meeting. BevCam is streaming and broadcasting our meeting tonight. Thank you so much, BevCam. Beginning on June 16, 2021, with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, which were twice extended and now further extended until March 31, 2025, local governments and boards were granted provisions to, among other things, host meetings remotely by suspending the need for a quorum and chair to be physically present. It asks our body to use technological methods to allow safe public access. And as a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participation of members, although through that permission, the chair and the quorum will be physically present, and then this act and its extensions will expire. Joining us today are members of our CISL committee, and with that, because we are in a hybrid format, I will call the attendance, and then we will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance after that. For attendance, Rachel Abel.
Here.
Karen Robinson.
Here.
Dr. Flaherty. Derek Brennan.
Here.
Dr. Trochik. Stepped out for a minute. Katie Kraft.
Katie is joining us online. Katie, can you come off of mute to make sure we can see and hear you?
Okay. I'll circle back. Patricia Spanks. Ryan Redmond. Can we confirm that everyone can hear us who's online?
They can't.
Katie, can you hear us? Come off of mute if you can hear us.
Is there something in the chat?
Those were just my...
Okay.
They
Well-
can't.
Jacob, how about you? Can you... I don't think they can hear us, Kim.
Okay, I think our remote participants probably can't hear. Just want to give it a second.
Katie or Jacob, could you come off of mute to make sure that we can see and hear you in the remote meeting platform?
Do they have video so that they can do that at least? Thumbs up? Or-
Maybe we can ask in the chat if they can use video. Okay. I will go down, but if I don't hear anything, I will circle back. So we stopped at Ryan Maverick Genist.
Here.
Okay. Sadie Brennan, I think was online. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry, Dad's here. Thank you. Sorry. Akal Dang.
Here.
Jacob Atunes, it's online. And Delphine Qua.
Here.
Okay, we will,
Did you
I'm
get
sorry.
Maverick?
I was able to get a hold
Yes.
of Katie. She said she's able to see us but cannot hear us.
She can't hear us.
Okay, yes, I did get Maverick.
Okay, we'll work on that.
Okay, well, it looks as though we're having some technical issues that we're going to work on. While we do that, I will ask if we can at least start with the Pledge of Allegiance while that's happening. So Ms. Robinson, would you lead us in that?
Sure.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So President Abel, I don't know if we will have the necessary body to approve our minutes from previous meetings, if we have folks that can't hear.
We have to keep asking them. I'm trying
Okay.
different settings.
Jacob or Katie, can you hear us now on the remote meeting platform?
Ask again, please.
Trying the remote meeting platform once again. Jacob or Katie, can you hear us? Yeah. Can anybody hear us?
Do you want to try asking in the chat if anyone can hear?
One more time. Check. Test.
Testing, 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 testing.
Okay.
Testing.
I see a thumbs up. What does that mean?
Just thank you for your patience.
Oh. Okay.
Testing.
I know what it is. One moment, please. Okay, can you ask them again?
Testing, testing. Can anyone confirm they can hear and see us? Great, Katie. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your patience.
We're a little out of practice. We haven't been in the room for a while. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, everyone, for your patience with our technical issues. I will redo a part of the roll call. We know that Dr. Trocheck stepped out. Katie Kraft, I see a hand there. Yep, thank you. Patricia Spanks. Okay. Ryan Redmond.
I do not see him.
Okay. And I think that was it. We did get Jacob. Oh, I saw Jacob. Jacob? Yes, thank you. Okay, thank you so much, and thanks you for your patience. The first order of business is I'd like to make a motion to approve our minutes from October 9th, 2024.
I will second that motion.
Are there any edits or corrections for the minutes from October?
I don't see any hands.
Okay. Seeing none, if we can just call the roll to approve those minutes. Rachel Abel,
Yes.
Karen Robinson,
Yes.
Derek Brennan,
Yes.
Katie Kraft, Maverick Jennist, Akol Dang,
Yes.
Jacob Atunis,
Yes.
Delphine Qua.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We've approved our minutes, and I believe our next item on our agenda is going to be our updates from our students. Thank you all. I know you have homework, and so we ate into a few of your minutes. So thank you so much. I'm not sure who'd like to go first. You're sitting in this order, so I'm inclined to have you all decide. Okay, April, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So far, easing back into the school after strike has been incredibly smooth, thanks to all the help from the staff in the extended trimester. This week in science, we've started working on the periodic table and diving into atoms and molecules, which has been super interesting. I'm really looking forward to some upcoming events, especially the red carpet dance in February. My friends and I are already discussing what we're going to wear and hoping the music will be great. Overall, I think I can speak for all the students when I say that we are thrilled to be back.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Delphina, you're going next? Okay, thank you.
Hi everyone, happy Wednesday. Today I'm really excited to talk to you about what life is like for me and a bunch of other 8th graders and students at this time. Ever since returning from the strike, I had to get my mindset back into my daily school routines, like remembering to do my homework or taking notes in class. I'm gonna have to admit it was pretty hard at first, especially since I've been staying at home, or I've just haven't had a schedule for everything. But once everyone was settled back in, we jumped right back into whatever we picked up wherever we left off from before the strike. In civics, we're talking about the 3 branches of government in the United States, which I really enjoy ever since I discovered I like talking about politics. I really like civics class because every minute or every day we spend 10 minutes watching CNN 10, and my class really likes to get into a Q&A moment where we discuss what the news talked about that day, whether it was interesting or important, or whether it was really worth putting on the news station. Sometimes I think we learned a lot more than my teacher, Mr. Fiore, actually intended us to. And overall, I'm really happy to be back at school.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, you are next, Brennan.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to say the return to school due to the teacher strike ending has been quite smooth so far. The first day back, which was the day before Thanksgiving, the annual pep rally was hosted at Beverly High. The first showing of Little Woman, produced by the BHS Stage Right Drama Club, will be Friday, December 11th at 7 p.m. in the BHS Auditorium. Also on Friday, there will be a home advisory for students to write letters of gratitude, which are given to teachers of their choice. Over the last 2 weeks, tryouts and practices were held for winter sports for hockey, basketball, and track. Boys basketball hosted their first scrimmage this week against Melrose, while boys hockey will travel to Haverhill today for their first scrimmage. And to finish, the National Honor Society is doing their annual fundraiser, and this year it is raffle baskets, and tickets will be sold for $5 each. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Brennan, I believe you have our other report?
I have Sadie's,
Yes,
but we
no?
also have Jacob
Oh,
online.
you do? Okay. So you have Sadie's? Okay. All right. Jacob, would you like to go next?
Yeah.
Oh, great. I'm glad you can hear us. Thank you. Hi, Jacob. I think we're having a little trouble hearing you on this end.
I don't know if I can fix that.
We're not sure
Maybe have an email it.
how to fix that. We're wondering if maybe you can, you want to put some highlights in the chat or email it to us, and then we'll circle back to you in a couple minutes. Thank you. Thank you.
While we're waiting for that, I'll read
Dr.
Sadie's.
Flaherty, thank you.
So Sadie from the high school, cannot be with us this evening, but she did send in her update below. And she wrote, "Hello, everyone. Lots of exciting news has been coming out of the high school recently. Winter sports started with the first basketball game this Friday and the first track meet this Thursday. The fall play, Little Women, premieres this Friday, and the school musical auditions for the Addams Family took place yesterday and Monday. We also had an amazing time at the annual pep rally and were able to get an amazing Thanksgiving Day win against Salem," which is all exciting news.
And we are also joined by Ryan Redmond now.
All right. Thank you, and thank you for that update. You can please let us know when Jacob might have some other information in the chat for us. Thank you. Other updates? Did we get everyone? I feel like we did, except for Jacob. We want to check the chat really quick. We're just going to take a look at the chat briefly since we had some technical issues hearing Jacob.
He's
going
going
to
to take a moment to send it.
Okay, excellent. So thank you so much for being flexible and how you send that to us. We really appreciate that, and we want to thank our students as well for their updates. I just want to make sure we did not miss anyone else for their updates on here. Okay. All right, well, thank you all so much. I know that it is very wet and it's going to be a long evening. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you're also welcome at this time if you want to depart and work on homework or other things. So thanks again, and like I said, you're welcome to stay. With this, I want to turn it over to Dr. Flaherty for the other part of our agenda, which is looking at our calendar changes, trimesters and quarters.
Thank you. There'll be a much lengthier discussion about this at the actual school committee meeting after this meeting, but wanted to make sure that the members of CISL were at least kind of up to date with what has to occur at school committee. And so as a result of the strike, there are 12 school days that we need to make up this school year. We, by law, need to complete 180 school days. And one of the questions that we've probably heard most frequently is, can't we just lengthen the day and add time to the day to make up the lost time? And the answer to that is no, because the law is very clear that it has to be 180 days. We have another requirement that focuses on hours, but there is also a component of the law that is very strict about how many days that you have to be in school. Graduation will be proposed for June 15th. That also has to move up because by law, we can't have graduation more than 10 school days before the regularly scheduled last day of school. The school committee will look at several different options tonight, but just as kind of an overview, we do have to make up the 12 days, and there are different ways that we can do that. One is to get one day on December 23rd, which was supposed to be off for the whole week. That is, would be planned to be a school day, and then 4 days during February vacation. Then we could also look at the April vacation or adding the snow days at the end of the year, which would bring us up to June 27th. That only allows one school day for snow or bad weather for the rest of the school year. If anything occurred that brought us to the June 30th date, we would then have to start looking at April vacation or Saturdays. And that will be a discussion that the school committee will have later on. And one of the other biggest questions we have is, can't we get a waiver? And the answer is no. The commissioner has made it very clear that he does not intend to issue any waivers, and it is by legislation, so it would have to go to the legislature in order to amend any of those days because it is a state law. As a result, we also needed to do some revision to the quarters and trimester dates because both would actually ended while we were out of school. Where you will see, and this is linked in your slides that you'll get tomorrow, but the school committee will also be seeing these later. And what will happen is that where you saw the blue dates will be the extensions as to when the quarter and the trimesters will now end for first trimester, which then needed to alter a little bit for a second trimester, trying to balance as many equal days as possible. So for first quarter at the high school, it ended on Tuesday, December 3rd. And for the trimesters, it's actually today. Today is the end of the first trimester, and Thursday and Friday will be parent conferences at the elementary schools, and report cards will be issued on December 18th. And then you'll see for the high school, they tried to keep it right between the 40 range, so the first one is a little bit extended because that was actually when the period of time is that we were out. You'll see that that's true with the balancing the rest of the days. The last trimester is the longest, and that's because we also need to take into account MCAS and other types of assessments. And those dates may change a little bit depending on what the school committee decides how we're going to make up the time. So if it goes into one of the other trimesters, it may change the balance of those dates. So this is the first revision. There may be others depending on what the decision is moving forward. For trimesters, because we have a longer period of time that we can deal with, we were actually able to get even days for second and third trimester at 63 days apiece. Any questions on that before I move to our next topic, Delphine?
Hi, thank you. I have a question about April break. If we do decide to make up school on April break, do we know if the 8th graders who will be going on the French trip and the Puerto Rico trip for Spanish?
That will be
able
part of the
to make them?
discussions that will happen later on, but I do not believe that we are talking about postponing the trips at this time. But
All right.
the final word won't come until after the school committee meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we did have 3 policies on the agenda. We are going to ask you to vote on 2 of them. We're going to table JC attendance area until a future meeting because we needed to gather some additional information on that policy. So the first policy that you had in your packets was JFABD, which is Homeless Students Enrollment Rights and Services. We are asking for one required recommended change in this one, and that is to remove number 5 in the list, and I'll pull that up in a moment for you to see. But it just says awaiting foster placement. If you remember at a previous CISL meeting, we split the homeless and foster care policies. It's covered under a different policy now. And it was listed in this one, so we just need to remove it. And school committee will be voting on the policy that separates them later tonight. So when this comes forward to them, we would recommend amending, taking number 5, if you see on the list, awaiting foster care placement. We just want to remove that. That would be the only change recommended for JFABD. And then JCA, which is assignment of students to schools, there are no changes that are necessary. It will remain, we recommend that it remains as it currently is. And I'll entertain any questions, and if not, we need separate motions to accept the JFABD as amended to move forward to the school committee for a first read.
I'll make a motion that we move JFABD with the edit of removing item number 5 for the homeless student enrollment rights and services policy to the full school committee.
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Dr. McKenzie, can we have a roll call?
Thank you. So I'll call the roll for that vote, please. President Abel,
Yes?
Karen Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Flaherty,
Yes.
Derek Brennan.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Trocheck is absent. And Katie Kraft. I believe I heard you, but I'm not, I don't know if you can use your thumbs up or down there, but it's coming off a little, or the chat, either one. Okay. All right, and I believe Patricia Banks is absent, still absent? Okay. Ryan Redmond? Great. Sorry, for the folks online, you may unfortunately have to use the chat, it sounds like, and Ryan, I see your response, yes. Maverick, I believe, just left. Sadie's not here. A. Calden?
Abstain.
And Jacob is going to abstain too, right, student? And Delphine, I'm going to just take it up. Okay, thank you.
Jacob and Katie both said yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. And then we need a motion to approve policy JCA and move the recommended policy to school committee for a first read.
I'll make that motion.
Motion's been made. We need a second.
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Ms. Abel. Could you call a roll?
Okay, thank you. I'll call the roll. President Abel,
Yes?
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Dr. Flaherty.
Yes.
Okay, Derek Brennan.
Yes.
Dr. Trocheck is absent. Katie Kraft.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up, okay. Patricia, I believe, is absent. Ryan Redmond.
Thumbs up. Yes.
Okay. And our students, I believe, are abstaining. Okay. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We'll move those forward in the next meeting for a first read.
Okay.
I wanted to give you, it seems like a very long time ago right now, but we didn't have a meeting in November, so we wanted to be able to give you an update on our professional development day that took place on Election Day. It was a really exciting day, and I think everybody was a little apprehensive as to how the day would go, knowing that we were looming into a vote towards the strike the next day. But we had a fantastic day. There was so much enthusiasm, and the participants were engaged. Our speakers were wonderful. We had some from outside, some from within our own staff. And this just kind of gives you an overview of the day. And then I have a few slides from a survey that we provided, that we gave to the staff. So there, within the day, over multiple things, we had 550 participants. We got survey responses from 527, which is an outstanding response rate on a survey. We provided one keynote that everybody came to in the morning, and that was on artificial intelligence and the impact to schools and classrooms, and how it can be used as a tool for instruction, and how to avoid some of the pitfalls that it can also bring with it. We then split the rest of the day into two 90-minute workshop sessions with choice that teachers were able to choose where they went, and teachers and paras, and administrators. We had 12 workshops for session one. Several of the workshops that we knew would be popular ran both sessions so that people had some flexibility to get to as many of the things as they wanted. And session two had 10 different workshops. When you get the slides, the link gives you a full description of all the different activities, but the list below just kind of gives you a good overview of the multiple choices that people had. We had a whole AI strand, so you could have spent the whole day in our artificial intelligence. We also had a keynote speaker come back, Carrie Stack, that had presented at opening day, and people really loved her. She came back to do a follow-up on SEL for individual self, and then also how to take the skills that she taught and incorporate them into your classroom for your students. We had a speaker that came, a local author, as well as her writing partner that flew in, I believe it was from Chicago. But they had written a book on being an advocate for transgender youth and how to create school environments where all of our LGBTQIA students feel welcome and like they belong in our schools. We had some equity sessions. We had our curriculum coordinators that ran specific workshops around ELA and math. We had a wonderful presenter from the Beverly Historical Society that came to go over all of the different resources and actual field trips, either going out to the locations right here in Beverly or having them come to school. And that was really, really well received because we want to make sure that we're using our local resources. So that went very well. Our nurses spent the day together doing a online workshop separate from the workshops that you see here that are targeted to their profession. And then we also had several different options for mental health and trauma-informed classrooms. The agenda had November 4th, but our actual day is November 5th. And so this was, the question had people either attending here in district, but we also have a partnership with ECLC, which is a wonderful partnership for us, and they run wonderful professional development throughout the whole school year. But on election day, they bring in larger speakers, and they actually used Essex Tech to go to. They have a great presentation space. And so we had, I believe it was 34 faculty and paras that went to that workshop. And then the remaining 93.5% were here for our in-district workshops. This slide is from the people that attended the ECLC conference. Their topic was around conversations we need to have but often avoid, and it was all around conflict, high conflict, and conflict resolution. 91.1% strongly agreed or agreed that they learned at least one new piece of learning that they can use within their role in their everyday profession. When you see all of the slides, some of the print is small to see, but so that you understand the colors. Blue is strongly agree. The red you would think is disagree, but it isn't. It's agree. The yellow is neutral. They didn't agree or disagree. Green would mean that they disagree, and purple are strongly disagree. So people were very satisfied with this option. This was the in-district. You'll see that 83.4% strongly agreed or agreed that the day provided a good balance between required trainings and choice options. That was feedback that we got from our professional development committee, that people wanted to be able to have more choice in where they went. And so we struck a good balance between having the keynote that was for everybody and then the workshops that provided choice for people to attend. This was specifically around the keynote presentation. 75% agreed or strongly agreed that the keynote presentation provided relevant and helpful information. I think that the speaker did a really good job of listening to some of the people in the room that are hesitant. He really did a spectrum of input and acknowledging that there are people that are ready to jump right into this, and there are people that don't even want to discuss it. And so having that large of a crowd with different varying backgrounds, the comments were well received. He also did, Mr. Kuliak did the keynote, but then also ran a follow-up workshop for people that wanted to delve in deeper or to ask more specific questions about their own classroom practice. And that, again, was well received. The next few slides are around the session 1 workshops, and again, this is where people were able to choose where they wanted to go. 87.2% strongly agreed or agreed that their selection for session 1 provided them with relevant and helpful information, and 84.6% strongly agreed or agreed that they learned at least one new thing that they can implement in their role. Session 2,
88% strongly agreed or agreed that their selected session provided them with relevant and helpful information. You'll see that in all these, there is a neutral section, but there's very small, if any, of the green and the purple. And that 86.2% in session 2 felt that they learned something that they could bring back and implement into their role. And the reason we don't put just teacher, because we had classroom teachers, we had guidance counselors, we have school adjustment counselors, we had city connects, we had administrators, we had paraprofessionals. And so that's why the broader question was about their individual roles that they have. And then overall, 82.6% strongly agreed or agreed that the PD day met their expectations. So we were very pleased with how the day went and with the quality of the sessions that were provided. So do you have any specific questions? Okay, seeing none. This is a very happy time of the year, and there are many different holidays and customs that get celebrated during this time of the year. And so we just want to take a moment to, from the administration, to extend our thank you for all of your time that you volunteer, and to wish everybody listening and everybody here a happy holiday season, whatever holiday you celebrate, and a happy 2025. Let's make it a really good one.
Thank you, Dr. Flaherty. Hearing 2025 makes me just a little squeamish there. But thank you so much. I appreciate that. With that, I don't believe we have any other agenda items other than to state that our next meeting is January 8th. So if we can have a motion to adjourn, we can adjourn a little earlier.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
The motion's been made and seconded. Can we have a
Okay,
roll?
excellent. Thank you. So I will call the roll. Rachel Abel,
Yes.
Karen Robinson,
Yes.
Dr. Flaherty.
Yes.
Something changed on my sheet. Sorry. Derek Brennan,
Yes.
Dr. Otrek absent. Katie Kraft. I'll take that as a yes. Patricia's not here, I believe. Ryan Redmond.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. And our students, I'm sure you would all agree, but I know you're not voting on that. Thank you again for giving us some of your evening. Much appreciation. And
Be
the meeting
careful
is
driving home in
adjourned.
the rain.
Yes. Thank you. We're adjourned.
I make a motion, school committee run it as quickly.
I'm ready. Okay.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Today is the Beverly School Committee regular school committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, December 11th, 2024. We are using a hybrid remote meeting platform this evening to allow people to participate remotely. This is also in conjunction with BevCam, who is streaming and broadcasting our meeting tonight on channel 6 and high definition 1073, as well as their YouTube channel. Thank you, BevCam. Beginning on June 16th, 2021, with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, which were twice extended and now further extended until March 31st, 2025, local government boards were granted provisions to, among other things, hold meetings remotely by suspending the need for the quorum and chair to physically be present. It does ask our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access in real time. As a note, Beverly has prior approval for remote participants of members, although through that permission, the chair and quorum do physically need to be present when this act and its extensions expire in the spring. Tonight is a regular meeting, which means that members of the public will have an opportunity to address the body. For public comment, please send your thoughts or requests for the remote link before the start of the meeting to residentvoice@beverlyschool.org or use the in-person sign-up sheet at the podium. You'll be asked to state your name and address for the record and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. And please remember, this is an address to the body. We will not reply. Joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams. I will conduct a full roll call attendance in just a moment for the record, since the meeting application sometimes does not display all of the participants. Please remember that any audio or video you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record, and as such, please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. I'd now like to conduct the roll call to ensure those who are remotely participating can both hear and see me this evening. I'm going to start in person. Mayor Cahill is absent this evening. And Ms. Quayla, I haven't heard from her, but I don't see her yet. We'll wait to see if she arrives. Dr. Kennan Mackenzie DeFranz is present.
Here.
In person. Ms. Karen Robinson is present in person.
Here.
Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Present. Ms. Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And I'm Rachel Abel. We're joined with our administrators, Dr. Sue Trocek,
Here.
Dr. Dorothy Flaherty, Dr. Andre Morgan, Emma Puglisi, Aaron Brown. Remotely, we have Bethany Spolansky online. Can you confirm you can hear us and see us? Okay. Thanks, Bethany. The line seems to be really choppy on Zoom tonight. Hopefully we can figure that out. Hopefully you can hear us okay. I would offer that the YouTube channel might be of lower bandwidth requirement. If anyone is having trouble hearing us this evening, the YouTube channel might be a better option. Okay, we're also joined by Donna Bergeron and Mark Thomas. Okay, we have Delia Gauker, the birthday girl. Happy birthday. Okay, and a number of our educators have joined us. Thank you so much. We're also joined online by a number of educators and guests. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I think, Dr. Silva, it's your turn. If you would lead us, please. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, Dr. Silva. Our first order of business next is the report from our student representative, Delia.
Thank you. On the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, students came back to school and we held our annual pep rally. Senior football players, cheerleaders, and all fall athletic teams were recognized. The classes competed for the Spirit Cup, and the band and cheerleaders performed, as well as the Choreo Club. The seniors managed to win the Spirit Cup. Fall sports teams finished their seasons. Many teams had NEC-recognized athletes and were competitive in the playoffs. The unified basketball team is especially excited for me to announce that they won all their games, but won this year, having a lot of fun with a ton of school support and participation at games. Winter sports are now underway with tryouts completed and practices starting. At the end of November, there was an 8th grade open house at the high school for current 8th graders, rising freshmen, led by upperclassmen. Sports teams for all seasons and clubs set up tables throughout the school. There were also performances by the jazz band and vocal ensemble. Seniors had the opportunity to do on-the-spot admissions for North Shore Community College coming up. This weekend, the Stage Right Drama Club is putting on a production of Little Women with 4 shows from Friday through Sunday. And report cards were posted on Tuesday, November 10th on Aspen Portals for students and families. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that report. As always, you're welcome to stay for the entire meeting, but we understand if you have homework or birthday cake waiting for you at home. Next, the committee is taking up the approval of our meeting records. We have 2 sets. I'll take them individually. The first set is our October 9th regular school committee meeting.
Motion to approve?
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Were there any edits or corrections to the 9th of October's record? Not seeing any. All of the members of the school committee are present, so we can actually do a hand vote. All those in favor of approving the meeting records?
I'll abstain.
You're abstaining. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 abstention. Okay, and then I'm also looking for a motion for the October 23rd Committee of the Whole minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Were there any edits or corrections that needed to be made to this set of meeting records? All those in favor of October 23rd? 5-0. Thanks. Okay, it's 7:36. This is the time on our agenda for resident voice on input for agenda-related items or non-agenda-related items. The president will consider requests to address the school committee at this time. We did have 1 person sign up in advance. If anyone else is inclined to sign up, the sign-up sheet is on the podium. And we'll begin with Ms. Castro. Thanks. And for BevCam and the viewers at home, you just need to press the microphone until it turns green. It doesn't amplify in the room, but it does pick it up for BevCam.
Good evening. My name is Erica Castro. I live at 1 Penny Lane in Beverly. First, I'd like to thank the school committee and Beverly School administrators for their efforts to resolve the teacher strike as quickly as possible. In particular, I'd like to thank School Committee President Rachel Abel, Mayor Mike Cahill, Dr. Jeffrey Silva, and Dr. Sue Shiroshik for their steadfastness and professionalism during these fraught negotiations, which, even from an outsider's perspective, seemed unnecessarily mean-spirited and disrespectful. Which leads me to my second point. While we can all agree that teaching is among the most honorable of professions, its nobility is shaken when members of its ranks, even if only an exceedingly small percentage, are publicly unruly, threaten, demean, and/or harass members of the school committee and administration. This would or should include liking a comment on social media, calling a school committee member incompetent, a liar, a witch, a word rhyming with witch, a crook, dumb, hack, loser, many other words I wouldn't ever publicly utter, and repeatedly publishing the home addresses of school committee members, coupled with suggestions from members of the public to visit their homes and harass them, which happened. While it was disheartening to observe on social media many ugly posts authored or liked, posts now permanently retained in innumerable screenshots, shared between horrified parents watching this witch hunt, most of us know firsthand how lucky our children are and were and are to have the teachers they had and have. Good people doing some of the hardest and most important work.
Thus, there is an acknowledgement that the disturbing social media posts authored or liked by teachers, their family members, and friends do not represent the views or ethics of the wider group of teachers. However, the actions of just a few can unfairly and irreparably taint the reputation of all educators and thereby undermine their hard work and well-deserved community standing. Words, decorum, and adherence to laws matter, and the kids are watching. Collectively, let's learn from this divisive, damaging, and unfortunate series of events and do better. Above all, let's never allow our children to again be used as bargaining chips by the Massachusetts Teachers Association, and let's show some class and intelligence by appreciating the efforts of those in this room who bravely, calmly, analytically, and skillfully led the negotiations with the BTA/MTA while enduring unforgivably poor behavior. In the future, I hope if threats of a Beverly teacher strike are raised again, members of this community, especially parents, will immediately stand up and unequivocally and forcefully respond with the following message: no, never again. By staying fearful, compliant, and quiet, we invite the repetition of the abhorrent tactics just witnessed in Beverly and beyond, to the detriment of Beverly children, whom we greatly care for and for whom schools are built. Thank you.
I think I saw at least one other person sign up. Is there just one more? Megan Walsh. You need to just press it so it's green. Thank you.
Megan Walsh, 3 Burleek Street, also a teacher here in Beverly Public Schools. Hi, Delia. I want to start, Sue. I just want to say publicly that I am so sorry for your losses over the course of this past few months. I want you to know that everything aside, putting everything aside, there are many moments throughout this experience that I processed or I thought about how you were processing what you needed to do here, in addition to grieving your family members. And I'm speaking, of course, for myself right now, but I am speaking for other educators who went through this process as well. And I just wanted to say that here publicly with this audience to let you know that that was not, even my voice is shaking, that it was not lost on people. And I often reflected on how I could go through what we all collectively in this community, regardless of what side we were on, went through, while also managing that loss. So I am sorry. There were many different sides to the story throughout this past month. There were many different actions that folks took on both sides of the table that were challenging and offensive to our entire community, and challenging and offensive to the educators who have dedicated their lives to this career, and some of them their lives to this community. I spoke at City Council last week. I shared a statement that was timely and popped on social media, so the irony is not lost, of Ralph Waldo Emerson making a statement of how December is a time for both looking back and also looking forward. And when I read that quote, it prompted me to think of how many people kept saying to me throughout this process, how did this happen? How did we get to this place? What went wrong? And I think we could all spend a lot of time analyzing that, debating that, fighting about that. But I think what's more productive for our community and our school system is that we spend more time looking at how we move forward, but also how we move forward in a way to make sure that the same mistakes do not happen again. I feel it's important that all community members, educators, and those throughout our community realize that part of what happened this past month was a result of too many people not being involved in their city government, not being involved in city politics, not being involved in school committee actions. I also think what happened in this month was a result of an overwhelming amount of time, length of time, of people not feeling their voices were heard and not feeling that the things they were doing were perhaps respected and valued throughout the school district. And I think there's healing to be done. You know, I think everyone's saying, how do we move forward? How do we heal? But I don't think we're necessarily ready to heal yet if we can't step back and reflect and take ownership on both sides of things that we would have done different should we have had the chance. I think people need to be thoughtful and careful about what they are continuing to say and post and state in interviews now that this event has come to a close, the close meaning that the contract has been settled, the strike has been over. I would really appreciate if we could figure out a way to continue to present information to the community from the schools that isn't consistently repeating that students have missed out on time, or that the strike happened, or that the teachers chose to do this. It did happen. We know it happened. We know there are many different feelings about it, but we cannot keep having weekly updates to the community about how the strike happened. We do need to move forward with that. And I know we're making decisions tonight. About making up days and how to kind of fix damage that has been done. But I think we also need to remember that going forward, we need to think about what we are saying. And we need to, as I started this statement, reflect not only on what happened, but reflect more on how we're going to move forward and prevent it from happening again. And I appreciate, I'm sure I went over 3 minutes. I appreciate the time.
Thank you for your time, Megan. Just checking to see if there was anyone that had interest in signing up. I don't see any signups online either. Okay. The next item on our agenda this evening is items by consensus. This is the warrant items listed A through I, quite a few for us to approve this evening. The dollar amounts and the warrant numbers are all listed on the agenda. As a group, I'm looking for a motion to approve these warrants, pay our bills.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Wisnick.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. We'll do a hand vote. All those in favor of passing the warrants? 5-0. Thank you. 7:48. Next, Dr. Trocheck, it's time for your superintendent report. I know you have a number of items for us tonight.
Mike?
Thank you.
Yep, we have 3 items on the agenda tonight. First is a voting item for the committee to consider a revised 24-25 school year calendar. We have, I'm going to informationally present information about the FY26 budget calendar, and then you all received in your packet the NEC annual report, the North Shore Consortium's annual report, and that is informational as well, and in case anyone has any questions about that. So first, to move on to the revised calendar, I did in advance of the meeting, send all of you sort of a list of different options to be considered. So I'm just going to kind of go through, when we voted on our original school calendar, we always vote for a 185-day calendar is how the Department of Ed looks at it. It's a calendar that has built-in 5 extra days for snow days. The original calendar had June 17th as our last day of school, but also included those 5 optional weather-related emergency closures, leaving June 25th as the last day. If the district were to need, so when we look at the calendar, we had 12 days that need to be rescheduled into the calendar as instructional days. And so I think that at one point we have tentatively looked at December 23rd and the 4 days of February vacation. That would be 5 of the 12 days that we need to add back into the calendar. That leaves 7 days further that need to be added into the calendar. So there are a couple of points that I will just make for anyone that has those questions. First of all, it's a statutory requirement that that students attend school for 180 days, so that there's not an opportunity. I've had a few suggestions. Could we lengthen the day every day and then have those minutes count to add up to the additional days? But there has to be a physically scheduled day, 180 days in the school year. As well, they have to also meet the hours of requirements, so elementary and middle school, which is categorized as elementary K through 8, would need to attend 900 hours, and the high school would need to attend 990 hours. There have been questions about whether or not we could get a waiver from the Department of Ed. There is a process for applying for a waiver for unanticipated emergency situations. I did speak directly with Russell Johnson, who's the Commissioner of the Department of Ed. There are no waivers being offered for this situation or any other communities near us that might be facing the same situation. So that he is not considering waivers for those communities. So it is incumbent upon us to find 180 instructional days. They also must be completed by June 30th. You can't roll into July. They all have to be completed by June 30th. So I have, I've set it up so that there are I've outlined 3 different options, but these options are not exclusive. They can be any combination of options. I just wanted to walk through, I don't know why I'm having, there we go. So one option, in addition to the December 23rd and February dates, is to consider using up to 4 instructional days, adding up to 4 instructional days back into the April break. That would be April 22nd through April 25th. And then we would still need to add the 3 remaining days to the end of the school calendar. That would make the last day scheduled for June 23rd and allow for up to 5 weather days to be scheduled before the June 30th date. That's one option. Another option is to consider adding school on a Saturday and or a Sunday, up to the committee, however you would want to consider that. And those days, again, if you added up to, just as one scenario, up to 4 instructional school days on Saturdays, you could think about 1 per month. You could think about all 4 in a month. Any combination of those, again, would leave June 23rd, allow up to 5 weather days to be scheduled before the end of the time. And then finally, the final option you could do is there are 8, right now, as we sit, there are 8 remaining days left in June, from June 17th till June 30th. You could just add all of the 7 remaining days to the end of the calendar, making the last day of school June 27th. If there were 1 related weather closure, the last day would be June 30th. However, in this scenario, if there were more than 1 weather-related day, we would have to readjust and add those days in somewhere. Anyway, you'd be back to the drawing board, needing to find a day to add back in. The only caveat was that is if the weather date happened after, is it May 1st, April 1st? April 1st, then it wouldn't matter. So you'd have to get to April 1st. Any days after April 1st, if they're weather-related, don't need to be made. So that's a lot of information to share with you, but, the only other consideration that I would want you to know as you're making your decision is that if we were to choose Saturdays as an option, there would be an additional cost to the district. We have AFSCME units other people that work in different unions. So, for example, food services or custodial or our clerks, they would have to come in on a Saturday. That would be at an additional cost to us because that and that cost would range, we think approximately $25,000 to $30,000 per day to open on a Saturday. So that's just another idea for you to have. I just want you to have all the information that you need.
Thank you. And typically we make a motion, but since there's 3 different options, I wanted to give an opportunity for school committee members to ask any clarifying questions before.
I just wanted to also point out, you have in your packets, this is a visual description. I didn't know, I know when we looked at calendars last time, this was helpful to a lot of people, so if you want to reference those, it might be helpful to you. I think Donna highlighted in yellow any changes, and that helps you see on the calendar where the days would line up. So just wanted to say that too.
Ms. Visnick, a clarifying question?
Yes, please. Can you speak to what is the percentage of attendance that needs to be in?
Yep.
And is that based on per school versus district-wide? And if it's per school, what happens if like one school doesn't make their number?
So I will find out more information to double check. It's my understanding that it would be district-wide and that it's 50%.
50, right?
50, yeah, 50.
Do we need other clarifying questions? I see Ms. Robinson, then Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Is there at all an opportunity for students to, how long of a day do they have to be in school?
Yeah, that's a
Could
good
they
point.
do a half day with a grab-and-go lunch at all during a break? Maybe?
It's something we could think about. I will say it still has to add up to the 900 hours, so that would matter. You know, what room we have. I think we have like 14 hours.
14 hours at elementary, we have 0 hours.
Yeah, it would not, at the high school, we could not do it. We don't have any leeway of the hours for the 990 hours. At the elementary, we have some wiggle room, but again, if you have a late arrival, which, you know, in hoping to not have snow days, we might want to utilize late arrivals, or, you know, those would also be carved out. So any early release days, the hours would have to be deducted. It's a possibility. There's not a restriction against doing that. So, for example, if you chose a Saturday, there's not a restriction against it being a 4-hour day. I think it has to be a 4-hour day. Not a restriction about making it less than a 4-hour day. But again, as long as in the end, when we add up all the hours that count, we hit 900 hours of instruction.
Okay, and the other question is, for students, if they have, so we have February vacation, and the students are supposed to be in school, if they already have plans, how does that work with DESE or us, whatever?
Yep, I actually communicated out to the community already in one of my memos that I sent home. You know, families that have pre-planned travel will not be penalized. We worked really hard, and I worked with Mark at the high school too. We have determined that, so we have certain policies that attendance impacts the grading, and so for the 4 days in February, we'll not be counting those absences towards the required 3. They're only allowed 3. But really and truly, you know, they will be instructional days, and we're really encouraging people to come to school on those days. It's really an important part of the school year, so.
Those are just a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I thought it'd be good.
So I had put that, you know, parents and families, students will not be penalized for that.
We have Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza, Dr. Silva, and then Ms. Visnick. Okay, thank you, Ms. Visnick.
All right, thank you. I have a series of questions, and maybe I'll ask one of your questions. I don't know. So just to make sure I'm clear, for those who already have travel abroad plans during the breaks, those students are compliant and those trips are going forward, or are we revisiting those?
Those trips are on as planned.
Is one in question based on
Enrollment,
numbers,
yeah. So that we are not canceling those trips. There's one trip that is having some challenges with getting the number of students they need to run the trip. But other than that, at this point in time, we have not canceled those trips.
Okay. I assume they counted as instructional time for the
They would
student?
count as instructional time for the kids.
Okay, great. A couple of questions for the graduating folks. I saw a new graduation
Yep.
date may be offered. A lot of families tend to plan very far in advance for graduation. I just don't know how fixed that is, but
Yeah.
the proposed date is quite far from graduation.
I can speak to
I'm
that.
just curious about how that might affect families and the seniors who do their internship work as well, assuming that that's also instructional time. So I just wanted to ask those two things before I ask my last question.
Okay. So in terms of graduation, that's also a statutory requirement that you cannot graduate more than 12 days before the last day for the rest of the school district. So the earliest day, if June 27th, say you went with the 7 days at the end of the year, were the last day of the school year, you could not hold the graduation prior to, I think it's June 10th when we backed it out. I think it was like a Wednesday or the June 11th or June 10th date. The Tuesday, Tuesday. So that's one of the, consequences of adding the 7 days to the end of the calendar. Whatever that last scheduled day and the last day for students is, it goes back, you count backwards, much like we do with the financial calendar that we just planned. You have to count backwards, and so we had originally had June 1st. June 1st isn't going to work in any of the scenarios based upon the information that we have and the number of days that we have to make up. June 8th might be a possibility if, in fact, you made up 4 of the days and we had no snow days. I think, so those are all. And I believe that in terms of internships, that was the second part of your question, was that, Mr. Thomas and his team have been working to adjust the calendar so as not to everything will continue, everything will happen as planned. I think there were a couple of items, for example, the senior prom is already set in stone. Typically, it would happen in a senior week, but I think it will be happening earlier because they've already booked the venue and there's no changing that now. But for the graduation, I think right now the thinking is plan it for June 15th to make sure that we have a date and everyone knows, so that we can't withhold making that decision for too long, because as you say, folks like to make their plans much further in advance. So that's all part of it. Do you want to help me out here? I hope you do.
Thank you.
I love being rescued.
I figured yelling from the peanut gallery was getting old, so.
I kept looking.
Yeah, so a couple of responses. We are exploring the ability to shift the prom. We don't know if the venue matters and what dates they have open, but we did want to explore that to try to keep that aligned with our senior week and keep all that together. But we should know by the end of the week if that's a possibility. As far as the internship program, depending on where things land tonight, as far as our decision, we have a couple of scenarios set up to have that line up with graduation and all of our senior events.
Perfect. Thank you. I do not envy your situations you're in with trying to move the schedules around, but I do have one question as I think about Saturday's cost, and there are students who may have services on Saturday or just Sabbath observations.
Or work.
Our work, just lots of things, particularly for our older students. Is there any inclination at all to think about an online option for the instructional time?
We did broach that. The online options
No?
would not be offered. They would not be approved at the Department of Ed. I did ask that in my conversation. Virtual is not an option for those days. We have a virtual day for our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders on the first day of school. That was approved through a pretty hefty process, 5 or 6 years, or maybe even more, a long time ago. And we were a little worried that was going to get nixed along the way when the remote academies broke up, and then after the pandemic, and then they kind of came back and said no more. But we were able to keep our authorization to have the virtual day on the first day, but they're not considering providing waivers for that.
All right.
Thank you. Dr. Silva and then Ms. Visnick.
My question was about remote Saturdays, so you answered that question.
Ms. Visnick.
I have, maybe two kind of related. One is if we choose to put all the remaining days at the end of June, which we recognize as a risk, if then we have snow days, might it change the discussion around getting a waiver? We could maybe get a waiver for snow because we'd already be up against the end of the.
I love the creative thinking.
I'm
not
trying.
so sure that the Department of Ed would love our creative thinking. I do not believe that, I can ask again, but, you know, my conversation and my discussion led me to believe that the department was not inclined to approve any waivers for this type of a loss of instructional time.
I understand, but that's not what we'd be asking for a waiver, right? If we make our calendar and we're going till June 29th and we have 3 snow days, we have nowhere else to put those snow days, so we'd be asking for a waiver for the snow days. I'm just making sure that my request
I understand what you're saying.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Okay.
His response at one point was, well, it's your license. You're the one that's responsible for making the calendar and making sure that what recommendations you made can fit in all of the days for the school year. You know, again, creative and again, but I'm not, I think they would think we were kind of gaming the system if we went with that option.
That's a fair statement. I was at the Centerville PTO meeting last night, and a lot of feedback from those from the members at that meeting, from the parents at that meeting, and one of the questions was, could we? I'm going to couch this and say I don't think there's an appetite for it, but could we wait to make our decisions until after like February, when we know that's the risky part of the snow? Because if we got through February and then we said, okay, look, we didn't have any snow, we didn't, knock on wood, have any snow days, then it might be more palatable to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. We can put them all at the end of June, versus making a decision right now that has this risk factor in it. And I just said I would bring it forward. I don't know that this body has any appetite, and I'm sure there's a lot of parents who don't want to be up in the air about that. However, I do think that it's important to listen intently, and have the discussions around different ideas. So I don't think that's so much of a question for you as it is a question for my fellow board members, if there's any appetite to think about that.
Would doing something
Ms.
like
Robinson.
that, if we waited, would that affect graduation, though? Yeah.
Well,
Like when, like people
I can't-
wouldn't know yet.
I would
when
just,
graduation-
I guess I would say in response, the committee has the ability to adjust the calendar anytime, right? So, I mean, there's not a limit to how many times you can adjust the calendar. So you can make your decision about where it goes, right? And then have another adjustment to the calendar. However, from the high school and myself, and from our standpoint, we would be setting dates that were set in stone for the graduation, the senior week. We would not leave those hanging, so then that would just defer to the later dates, knowing that that would be the later date that we would be doing. I guess, does that make any sense to how I just answered that? Okay.
Ms. Abel, I have one more.
Go ahead, Ms. Visnick.
This is not for necessarily this evening, but for a longer term discussion. We have our February and April vacations because our surrounding communities also have them. And I believe you've heard me say before that I'm from a place where we don't get 2 weeks of vacation. Instead, we split the difference and we get 1 week in March. And so there was some discussion last night about longer term. Can we somehow begin the process of working with our surrounding communities to revisit February vacation, to maybe have a 4-day weekend on February vacation and get 3 days back? Because we, especially as we continue to have weather-related closures and they're no longer limited to just snow, we're going to need to continue to reclaim days on our calendar where we can, and or revisit at the next, heaven forbid we talk about the next contract negotiation, the start date. So I think we really need to have longer term conversations about both of those items in order to look at our calendar very holistically with weather closures in mind. And so I'm just, based on this conversation, putting that out on the table, because I think I don't think any one of us voting on whether to get rid of February vacation is going to work. We're going to need it to be a regional conversation. And I know the superintendents hang out together and talk about things like that. And maybe we need to go to the state, whatever we need to do. I want to say that we need to start doing that. Maybe, in my lifetime that would happen. I don't know. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there any more clarifying questions before we entertain a motion?
The last thing that I'll say that I have heard from multiple educators is that a day in April is much more useful than a day in June, in the sense that when we get to June, our children and ourselves, I think, our staffs it's just different. I think we all recognize and would agree that June is just different. And to that extent, I heard that from several people last night, and so I wish to relay that as well. I will, that's where I'm going to stop.
Dr. Silva.
Is it possible to try to gain some time in early release days? Not have them be early release days?
It wouldn't change the 180-day.
Right.
There are no more professional development
Ms.
days
Robinson.
throughout the year? Sorry.
No more. Sorry, but no.
Ms. Visnick.
Are you looking for a motion
I am looking for a motion.
for one of these three options?
Or any combination of. Thanks, Mark.
Or a different one? No, I'm not interested. I'm not doing a different option. I would like to make a motion that we adopt option number 2,
Saturdays? The Saturday one?
the Saturday
With the added cost?
with what?
With the added costs,
We go back to that slide.
with $120,000 of added cost for that.
Yeah, there was a slide that showed the cost to do Saturday.
Oh,
openings.
sorry.
Sorry.
I think, we approximated between $25,000 and $30,000 a day per Saturday for the opening. That's just to cover the custodial, clerical, food service, bus transportation, all of those.
So yes, Dr. Silva, that is my motion, and I believe that those costs can become part of the discussion that we have to have with City Council about covering the entirety of the costs that we encountered during the strike, for which we're getting no payback from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a bill already that we quote-unquote can't pay, and we have to figure out how to do it. And to be brutally honest with you, I think that adding another $125,000 to that bill is something that I can sit here and say I have no problem doing.
There's a motion on the table. Is there a second? Is there discussion?
How about a blend of Saturdays and some other days to reduce the cost? Yeah. I mean, I think using Saturdays is a good option, but
I would want to know, are we thinking about doing 4 Saturdays in a row, like in one particular month, earlier versus later, or are you suggesting 4 Saturdays spread out, one per month? I think that
I love that I'm getting to make these because it's my motion.
I'm glad someone else is, because I just threw this together to have examples of what might happen.
I again, as a parent, I would not want to be thinking about 4 Saturdays in a row. Absolutely not. I think for myself, it would be palatable to think about 1 per month. That said, I'm very happy to talk about a friendly amendment, put something different on, maybe we do 2 Saturdays and 2 days at the end of June. I'm just trying to
5 days at the end of June. If you did 2 Saturdays, it would be 5 days at the end of June. Just one, is it,
Three, all right, we have to,
So you need
I'm not comfortable with putting 5 days at the end of June. And I don't,
so there are 5 days already built into the end of June. There are 8 days left at the end of June. So I just want, it's really, I know it's really hard to wrap all around. There are 8 days that are unused from, if we have no snow days, and if we had had no interruptions, we would have gotten out on June 17th. That would have left 8 days that could be used for snow emergencies, right? We need 12, but we have already come to an agreement around the 23rd and the 4 days in February. So that's 5 of the 12 days. So you have 7 days left.
Right.
And you have to work with 8 days that are left at the end of June, and then any other option you chose, whether they were Saturdays or April vacation. I don't know how to, it's hard to explain, but I think that.
all right, so I want to do 5 Saturdays, 1 in each January, February,
She said
March,
Friday.
April, May.
5 Saturdays.
I got 4 in February. I got 5 Saturdays.
Got 1 in December.
So that means I only have 2 left to put in.
Correct. And they would just go at the end.
2 at the end of June. That's my motion.
Dr. Silva, you still second that motion that has been amended?
Microphone, thank you.
Dr. Silva, do you?
I'll second it, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so it's option 2 specifying the Saturdays, 1 in January, 1 in February, 1 in March, 1 in April, 1 in May, and 2 days at the end of June.
I heard December too. Didn't we say December?
No, December's, that's the 23rd. So that's not, that's
That one's already baked in. We
that's-
already
We're already
did
using that one.
Gotcha.
And we worked actually with the union for an agreement on that date, so. And that was, we had to do the December 23rd and the February, we had conversations with, in advance, and I think I saw Julia on the, so we understand those 5 days, but it's the other 7 that are up for question.
I don't want to keep asking Ms. Visnick to clarify her motion, but I do have a question as to whether these could be half-day elementary, and I think I heard you say they need to be full day for high school for time on learning.
I'm just inviting Mr. Thomas to just come back in. I have one question for him because I don't think we cleared this before this meeting. Do we have sports scheduled for Saturdays, and will that require us changing that? And is that something that, now that we have lights, we could do? I don't know. But that would require communities to, I guess that's one, the ripple effect. I just want to state before you start, we had our student cabinet. We have our student ambassador cabinet, and our student ambassador cabinet came, and the things that they brought forward were sports, about Saturdays were sports, work commitments, and any other. So that just to share some student voice. I have the cabinet. I like to bring forward the things that they share with us. So that's why I brought him up, because that was a couple of the questions that we got from them.
Yeah, there'll definitely be Saturday sporting events, and depending on where this falls, we'll do our best to reschedule those and work around that. I can't speak to the spring right now, but I know for sure the winter definitely has Saturday athletic events.
And Dr. Trechek, my question was whether it needs to be a full Saturday
So that
for
was
the high school to
right,
make it
so-
time on learning.
Well, my first answer is yes. My second answer would be unless you make adjustments to your midterms, finals, MCAS, delay starts. Those are your only places that you can recapture your hours. But right now, we do early release at the high school for midterms, early release at the high school for finals, and we do late arrival for MCAS. And so there's hours you could recapture to then transfer over. Correct? So Dot's my time person. So just so I do, that would be something if they were shortened days, if they were 5-hour days or 4-hour days. Those hours would have to be reclaimed somewhere else in the high school calendar, only because of how tight we are on our time on learning with the high school. But that said,
I just saw Dr. Silva's hand, then Ms. Visnick.
So if you have half-day or a little bit more than half-day,
Your microphone, yeah, sorry.
Can you also add remote, or is there no remote whatsoever
No remote option.
to add to the hours?
The remote options would not impact the need to make the in-person hours, it's not an option. I mean, certainly can always go back and ask the commissioner that, but I would say from my initial conversation with him that that was not something that he was going to approve, or even forward for further approval to the Board of Ed or whatever.
Ms. Robinson?
And there are no holidays that we could.
So that's a good question, thinking about like a Monday holiday that we have, but I don't believe a federal holiday is something that we could work with. And I think that one of the holidays is a state holiday. That would be the April vacation Monday, right? The Monday of April vacation. That we would have to petition to state to say, can we use this day? I have not explored that option yet.
And then you would have to pay holiday rate.
Correct. So that 25 to 30,000 would probably just go up, because that would be holiday rate. Instead of time and a half, it would be double time for our AFSCME units, our clerical, custodial.
So they'd like
service.
that. They'd like that.
They'd like that. They might.
Ms. Visnick?
I think that even if we vote on this and it passes, we're still going to have to decide which Saturday of each month. And I think that in terms of saying, okay, once we pick the actual Saturdays, or once our administrators pick the actual Saturdays, relative to whether they could be half-days or not, and whether Mr. Thomas could reclaim the late start due to MCAS or whatever, I think that I feel like that's something that we could, quote-unquote, bequeath to them to work out. I mean, you guys do that all the time anyway. We don't vote on whether there's going to be a late start because of MCAS.
We will
So
work with whatever
that
you
is
tell us.
I'm not thinking that we necessarily need to be worried about that, and that if in fact it can be a 5-hour Saturday instead of or a 4-hour, whatever. Those details can be worked out by our administrators, and that we maybe don't need to be worrying about that lower level detail about the days.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza?
Seems like we're leaning towards the Saturdays. I already forgot what the other ones were. But with that being the case, I'm wondering, I'm just going to concede. I mean, I think as a parent, I can wrap my head around the Saturdays. I am a little worried for how we may inconvenience the weekend schedule for students and athletes. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to make the choice of that be the least inconvenient, meaning are there Saturdays in there that are better than some, or is it going to have an equal effect on the decision?
From the high school perspective, if I'm hearing you right, Ms. Visnick, we would try to stay consistent with, like, for example, the first Saturday of each, so it's.
In your
it's not-
sample, I had done the second Saturday just to show a pattern of what it would look like, thinking similarly that patterned wise, if it were the second Saturday, first Saturday of each month, it'd be easier to remember and, organize.
If you look at it in those terms, I think you're going to find an argument to shift it one way, so we would just make work with whatever we landed on. I don't think there's any one Saturday during the month that's better than another.
Thank you.
Ms. Robinson, then I'll call myself.
And do we have to do the same thing for every level? I mean, remember COVID? We did things differently. Like, could we be creative so that it doesn't affect, I mean, I know that might be a lot of extra work, but I just feel like there's so many unknowns here.
Yep.
I don't know
What
how-
initially comes to mind, I had not thought of that, but what initially comes to mind is you'd still be paying your transportation twice, you'd be paying your custodian, so then you'd be adding the cost of if you did something for elementary and then for secondary differently. That doesn't preclude, something slightly different for the high school, but transportation is the one thing that comes to mind for me when I think about that.
I would also suggest we have many families that have students at all three levels, so to do that to certain, you know, that's really impacting families and
Yeah.
stretching families.
Sorry.
Oh, that's a good point. Dot is just reckoning that the district count is probably on the same day for everyone.
But it's something we could ask.
Yeah.
I was going to make a comment that Saturday was my least favorite option, recognizing that family dynamics are different in some households where kids aren't always living in their Beverly address on Saturdays, and that parents often have complicated work schedules that include different childcare arrangements with grandparents or friends on the weekends so that they can work. I would hope that we would coordinate with the YMCA to have after-school care and arrangements to help support families for whom a Saturday option would be a real challenge.
So I've not broached that. I anticipate that having some challenges of its own because the Y has a pretty robust Saturday programming of their own that they do, very different from their school age program. So they have a school age program and then they have their own Y program. So that is a question that would take some thinking about.
Thank you. Dr. Silva.
I was just going to say that with regard to affecting the sports, that, you know, if it meant that it wasn't the first Saturday or second Saturday, that for a month or two, it ended up being a different Saturday because there wasn't a game on that day, that would probably be worth doing so that you don't have to reschedule.
Yeah, I'd have to take a closer look at schedules, but I don't think there's going to be one heavy Saturday versus another. And the only thing that might really impact that is the season themselves. You know, when you have a break from the winter season versus the spring season.
I am just called to attention. Actually, one of the people online is actually Kimmy Coelho. She's joined us and she has her hand up. Kim, do you have a question?
Yeah. So,
Kim, it's not going to work. Can you type it in the chat and I'll read it out loud for you? The audio is just not working with the weather outside.
Okay.
While we're waiting for Ms.
Yes,
Coelho to
Ms.
talk,
Wisnick.
I think that I wish to acknowledge what you said about the Saturdays. I think we're in a precarious position where, unfortunately, we have to pick the least of some evils. I feel very strongly that pushing all the days to the end of June has an incredible risk. And add to what I said earlier about June is maybe not the most engaged season for all of our students. And I think that it's unrealistic to take away April vacation. I don't think that anybody wants to think about going to school from January through June without any break. It almost feels like cruel and unusual punishment. So that's why I landed on the Saturday option.
Thank you. Okay, Kim Coelho asks, she's losing power due to the storm, and she's wondering if there's a consideration to apply to the commissioner for a good cause waiver. I think she missed that part of the
Yeah,
meeting.
she must have not, yeah.
Okay. Kimmy, no dice on a waiver. Okay, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Yeah, I would agree too with the point about not having a break until June. I think that would be really hard. However, I do also just have a concern. Let's say there were folks who were local and wanted to do that. I worry that if we have any of these dates, if we don't make our 50% threshold, do we then have to tack on a day? We do. So, okay. I think that supports your non-June option. I'm just worried that if we need any extra time, that we, not that I wish this, But if there's any day we don't make that 50% during one of the breaks, for example, or Saturday, it sounds like we have to have room in June should that end up being necessary. So I think adding at the end of June makes me nervous for that reason, just because of weather, or if there's any days we don't make our 50% threshold, if that's part of the concern.
That is why my very first question was, what's the percentage threshold? Because I do think that that's an important consideration. At the same time, I think that's pretty low threshold. So, but yeah, it's a risk.
I think I want to echo what Dr. McKenzie and Ms. Visnick are saying about, that risk that we take with the attendance. If we wait too long to make up the days, we will run that risk. And I think end of June, from a teacher's perspective, is not as effective as earlier in the calendar. But also I think that there would be more likelihood that people wouldn't show up on those last days because of pre-existing plans. So for that reason, I think I'm reconvinced that Saturday might be our best schedule. But just listening to the rain outside and knowing that these 3 inches of rain could have been 3 feet of snow, I'm a little worried that even the best laid plans that we will make tonight may be revisited. Are we ready to vote on the option that Ms. Visnick made for option 2 with one Saturday in January? I undid that. Are we ready to vote on the option 2 with Saturdays, 1 each in January, February, March, April, May, and 2 days at the end of June, with the administrator picking that either second Saturday or least disruptive Saturday and the timing?
And we can certainly work together and we can even, we can share it out with all of you for feedback as well, right? Like, to look at what those days are.
Are we clear on the motion?
Does this vote have to be binding? I just feel like there's so many moving parts here.
We need to have a plan.
Okay.
We can change it for Dr. Trocek down the road.
So the only thing I would suggest is that I think is it April 1st? Can you double check? We just got an email today. So there's a certain deadline after which, if there's no weather days, if there's a weather day, we don't have to make it up. So the only thing I could suggest is if a couple of, if there was an April and May Saturday and we got to the point where we didn't have to make weather-related days up, you could then tack them on to the end of the year, knowing that you had the room to do it. But I have two concerns about that. I am gravely concerned about making the 50% threshold, although I agree with you, it's a rather low threshold. And so part of me says, of course 50% of our kids are going to show up and they'll all be there. That would be a real challenge to have held a day and not met the threshold. That would be really disheartening for the teachers, it would be disheartening for the students, it would be disheartening for parents. So, I think when we make a decision, we have to make I think we're going to have to make a concerted effort all around to make sure that we get our kids in school and our families understand the importance of that. And I don't like the indecision for families. I mean, I'm getting a lot of feedback that let me know when it is. And, I think it's challenging. And it's challenging for the educators, too. Like, I think they need to know what it is and where we're going. So, you find it? It was in there.
Oh, one more point from Ms. Bisnick.
Well, what's on the slide there does not have, I added a 5th Saturday in May.
May. Yep.
Right. That's not your motion. That's just what I had thrown up.
Just making sure.
Yeah.
Do you have another comment, or are you
I'd
ready
like to make a motion to vote.
Move the question. Okay. Mayor Cahill is absent. Kim, did you hear the motion, and are you in a position to vote, or have you lost power again? I don't see her online.
It includes the February.
Okay. Ms. Coelho has another question. Ms. Coelho's question, what about teachers that work on Saturdays?
That's going to be challenging. I mean, the return to work said that teachers would be required to be in school on instructional makeup days.
Ms. Coelho, can you hear us? Are you in a position that you can vote on the motion that I have described? Yes? Okay. And is your vote yes? Oh, yes, you can hear. Is your vote yes? No, your vote is no? Ms. Coelho, will you type your answer for the Saturday option? Vote no. Thank you. Okay. Next is Ken-Ann McKenzie DeFranza.
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
No.
And then Jeffrey Silva
Yes.
and Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes. Okay, so we have 4 yeses, 2 nos, and 1 absence. The motion carries. Okay.
So just for future steps, I will work with the administrators. We'll map out and you want 5 Saturdays. So that was the motion for 5 Saturdays. Ms.
The
Visnick,
motion
5
was for
Saturdays,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Saturdays, 2 days in June.
2 days in June.
And that also includes a break, correct?
Includes April break. No, includes February break. It's
Yes.
School
So there'll be
makeup days,
the
but
December
leaves
23rd.
April break.
Right.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure an April break is
The
still on.
18th through the 21st in February. And then 5 Saturdays, and then 2 days at the end of the June calendar.
And graduation's a separate discussion, correct?
So now graduation is a separate discussion, but we'll have to have a conversation about that. It could be as early as the 8th now. The earliest it could still be is the 8th, but it could be as early as the 8th.
And
Thank you.
can we discuss at some point the idea of half-days on Saturdays or the possibility of President's Day, if that's a holiday that
But
we could use?
That's April vacation week, so you.
No, that's Patriots Day's April.
Oh.
President's Day's in February.
Is that a federal holiday? Yeah, so that's a federal holiday, so I mean, I can research some more. I was under the understanding that we could not utilize a federal holiday.
And what other holidays are there that we could possibly, that wouldn't be federal holidays?
Only Patriots Day.
Only Patriots Day. Okay.
Juneteenth is a federal holiday. The President's Day is a federal holiday.
All right, just checking.
Yeah. No.
Now I know.
Budget calendar.
Okay. Budget calendar, this is not a voting item, this is just informational. You have, Donna, did you pass these out? Okay, yep, so you should have a copy of this. This is really just an outline of what the calendar will be for our budget season. As you may or may not know, when we build the budget calendar, we start at we start backwards, and we have to follow through, much like we do with graduation. There has to be so many days in between when the public hearing needs to be and when we need to post it and when it needs to become public. So we work backwards, and this is the calendar. It's been developed much in the same way that we have for our budget process in the past, albeit pushed back a little bit, but will be, again, the proposals to the calendar proposes using the committee of the whole meetings each month as our budget discussion meetings. It includes information on here as to when the governor's proposed state budget is going to be released to the public, when the House Ways and Means will be coming out, and all of those dates are included in there. So we'll be beginning the budget process immediately, starting with some budget discussions with stakeholders. I'll be reaching out. Likely they will go into the first week of June and the second week, January, just in terms of the amount of time that we have. But that'll include my meetings and conversations and discussions. And then we'll, on the January 22nd will be the first start of the budget discussions for the committee. So that's just an informational item. And then my final item is just that informational. You have the annual report from the North Shore Consortium that provides information about all of the surrounding districts that participate. The North Shore Consortium is run with a board of directors. Each superintendent sits on that board, so every school committee, every district is represented. And they do a great job of providing this information out annually as to how many students from each community are going, the kinds of programs that they're running, and that you should have gotten that packet in your emails. So that's all I have unless there's any questions about the North Shore Consortium. Okay.
I don't see any questions. Okay, for the school committee chair updates, we do have policies in our packet this evening. These are a second reading, which will then require a vote. If you had remembered, these only had some pronouns that were being changed, and that last time we thought we would just mark them as reviewed for well, originally we were going to have it in November. I don't think we had that meeting. So it was going to be reviewed as of tonight, December 11th, with just the pronoun changes, unless anyone had any other motions they wanted to bring forward. These are BBAA, which is the School Committee Member Authority Policy, BBBA, and BBBB, which is the School Committee Member Qualification and Oath of Office. And then BBBC, which is the committee membership related to resignations. I'll make a motion that we mark these as reviewed December 11th, 2024, with just the pronoun corrections.
Second.
I heard 2 seconds down there. Give it to Karen, okay? Were there any comments? All those in favor?
Coelho's still online.
Okay, technically we have to do a roll call now. Kim Coelho is saying yes. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza?
Yes.
Karen Robinson?
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva?
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick?
Yes.
And Rachel Libby, yes. 7-0. Okay. 8:41 p.m. Thank you. We'll get those updated on the school district website. Yes. Dr. McKenzie.
Sorry, I just have a point of order question.
Sure.
It says the budget calendar needs approval on here. Is that the case? Did we have to vote to approve this calendar?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't believe we've voted on the calendar in
We've
prior
not voted
years,
on it in the
and we
past.
didn't have it marked as a
Okay.
voting
But you're more than
item.
welcome to vote on
It
it.
just says approval, so I want to
Yeah.
make sure. Okay. Awesome.
Thank
But
you.
you are more than
Yep.
welcome to do that.
Love points of order.
I think that, I'm sorry, may I?
Yes.
I think that part of we could suggest that we move some dates back further. And in the past, for instance, and we talked about that in FNF this evening, that we have on this calendar as it is proposed, time in between the public hearing and when we would actually vote on the budget. That has not always been the case. And so imagine for a minute, if you would, that we were supposed to vote on the same night that we had the public hearing. If a lot of people show up at the podium, that's not a good scenario, because we could be accused of not taking everybody's opinions into our thought process enough, in which case then you might want to suggest a change to the calendar. However, this calendar, because we've learned from past mistakes, this calendar has time in between the public hearing and when we would be expected to vote. But that's like an example of where we could suggest changes to this, but as a general rule of thumb, I don't think it's set in stone. I think it's safe to say it's not set in stone, except
not voted
that
on and it's not
there
set
are-
in stone.
There are some things as we move backwards from the June 30th date when the budget has to be approved by the entire city council, then you have to have the public hearing by a certain date. And everything else is wiggleable. That's a verb. I'm making it up.
And typically, as we get closer to that final vote, we work with the mayor to figure out with Memorial Day weekend if he's submitting to the city council before or after.
All right, that's helpful. So when you say budget calendar development and approval, that's a step taken by our administrators just to make sure they can put it forward. Okay, but I do see that they they did include that week, Ms. Visnick, so that's helpful, between the discussion and the advertisement and then the other vote. So that seems helpful. All right, thanks for clarifying on that.
Sure. The next item is
Can
that
I-
Carrie.
Can I just?
Oh, go
interrupt?
for it.
I'm sorry, I'm just going backwards. So I had asked Dot to take a look and double check on something, and on 11/12, which was November 12th, the commissioner sent out his guidance on making up dates. I don't know if it was in response to the communities that were having disrupted learning or not, but he states explicitly that if you cancel a full day, then you have to make up a full day. So if the days were, that we'll have to look, if of the days that were canceled between November 7th and November 26th were full days, we're required to make up full days. If they were half days, we can make them up as half days. I will call back tomorrow to get more clarification to make sure before we set that, but I just did not want to mislead people into thinking we could have half days on days that we can't, because my apologies, but I didn't see it before now. It came out on November 12th, and so it's been a little busy, so. But I don't want to mislead all of you into saying that I can do half days if in fact that's not going to be able to happen. So I just want to be clarified on that. Thanks, Dot.
But there's also a little bit of hope that if we had snow days, the days that you have to go up through your 185th day, but then if you're not going to be on track, you can request.
But only if you don't have other disruptions.
Yeah.
He was clear about that, so.
Okay, bringing us back into our agenda.
Just to make it a little more confusing tonight, sorry. I just don't want misinformation out there and for you to have an idea that I'm going to build all half days in, and then when I come back with full days, you wonder why.
I have an agenda item left over from our November meeting that did not happen, and that was to inform the public that the school committee has its own email address now that will survive any elected official. It is CC'd or BCC'd to each of the school committee members as a more efficient means by which members of the community can reach all school committee members. And I have already forgotten the address, but I believe it's schoolcommittee@beverlyschools.org.
We haven't used it.
Yeah, we haven't used it since it was set up at the beginning of November, but we will make sure that is prominent on the website and available to all people. At schoolcommittee@beverlyschools.org. Yes. And that email address will have just a little reminder that all emails that are sent to elected officials are subject to open records requests, and it has a reminder about Mass General Law to that effect. And that I would ask school committee members, as per usual, if we are all copied on a message, we do not create a serial communication issue by all responding to the member of the public who wants to address us all. And we will likely have more opportunities to discuss that in future meetings. Beverly Schools, plural.org. Thank you. In terms of upcoming meetings and dates, the negotiating subcommittee has a meeting scheduled tomorrow, Thursday, December 12th, with Unit B. And then the committee of the whole meeting for next Wednesday, the 18th, will be canceled. We had a number of the items moved on to this agenda. Okay. Next, standing committee reports. If I could ask the Chair of Finance and Facility, Ms. Visnick.
Thank you, Ms. Abel. Finance and Facilities was scheduled to meet next Wednesday night, and we met this evening instead to accommodate the fact that early next week I'm going to have a surgery, and I'll be unavailable next week and probably for a week or two after that. So earlier this evening, FNF met. Appreciate the flexibility of the members who could be there so we could have our meeting. We reviewed the budget calendar, which then came to the meeting of the whole this evening, along with expenses and revenues. We discussed, as I mentioned, adding the expenses of this Saturday, Saturdays to the other unpaid expenses that we have, and how we're going to try to handle that. We approved acceptance of a few grants and gifts to schools, and our next meeting is January 22nd. For those people who want to hear that meeting, because it ran concurrently with CISL, BevCam was not able to broadcast, but I did record it, and I ran it on Zoom so that we could record it, and I will deliver that recording to BevCam so it can be posted with all our other meetings. We are bringing forward, the Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities is bringing forward this evening for a first reading 2 different policies. DIB, Data Inclusionary Broadcasting. I don't know, I'm never going to pass the military alphabet game, but it's a policy on the revolving accounts. And EBCD, Edward Bravo, I think that's one of the letters really, cat dog emergency closings. We have no activity on those this evening. It's first reading. At our next meeting, like around January 22nd, we will probably have our second reading and vote on those. The Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends approval of the attached September 2024 gifts to schools in the amount of $1,009.22. That is my motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept with
Microphone. Thank you.
Motion and a second for a acceptance with gratitude of $1,009.22. We do have a remote participant, so I'll call the roll. Kim Coelho.
Vote yes.
Vote yes. Okay. Kenna Mackenzie DeFranza.
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva.
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes.
Thank you, everybody. Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends the approval of the 2 attached budget transfers. They were in your packets, number 715 and 796. That is my motion.
Second.
You're doing both of them together?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So Lorinda, Karen, no questions. I'll call the roll. Kim Coelho, this is for the transfers. That's a yes. Kenna Mackenzie DeFranza.
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Jeff Silva.
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
And Rachel Abel, yes. 6-0. One
And,
absent.
And finally this evening, Standing Committee on Finance and Facilities recommends the approval of the attached clerical substitute compensation rate. This was actually discussed at our previous meeting, but because of negotiations, this is the first meeting of the whole that we've been able to bring it forward to the whole body. That is my motion, that we approve the recommended substitute pay rate.
I'll second that motion. Are there any questions? Not seeing any, I'll call the roll. Kim Coelho. Substitute vote yes. Kenna Mackenzie DeFranza.
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva.
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes. 6-0.
That's the end of my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, if we could have the Standing Committee on Curriculum, Instruction, and Student Life report from Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza.
Thank you. It was really great to see our students again. For the most part, they talked about what it was like returning to school and the activities that they were commencing. So we talked about the play coming up. We talked about essentially how they were faring when it comes to making up different kinds of work and so forth. In general, it seems like at the high school it was going relatively smoothly. I think middle school, a little discussion around getting back into the routine. So generally, seem pretty positive about getting back into gear. We spent some time talking about how the quarters and the trimester dates are shifting. And so essentially shifting those dates down to make sure there was time to have students return to school. So December 4th is when the first quarter ended, and then we're looking at February 18th and April 15th. I don't know if those are in stone, but those are the dates we have right now. MCAS may also be affecting some of these dates. So we'll, again, have to stay tuned just to see and make sure we understand how that will affect it. Report cards should go out December 18th. And again, just reflecting on any shifts in the quarter that students had. And so with that, we also wanted to forward 2 policies for a first reading to this committee. One of them is on looking at voting on homeless students and how they're impacted. We removed one of the bullet points in that policy. And we're also looking to move another policy forward. I want to make sure I have the name correct on that one. Hopefully that was in your packet as well, I believe. So
They'll get that at the
JCA.
next meeting.
Yes, so you'll have the first reading for that, but policy JCA is that number, and the other one was JFABD, so homeless students, and then the second one, I don't want to misquote the name, but you will have a first reading on that. That's the recommendation, and that's what I have. Thank you.
I think we also in our packet have for second reading 2 of the items we've discussed in prior meetings, which are policy JFABE, which would be a new adoption. It's based on the MASC version. This is educational opportunities for military children. And then we also have for children in foster care, and that relates to the policy you just mentioned from CISL.
I did have a question though, because I felt like Dr. Flaherty mentioned maybe the one with regard to educational opportunities for children in foster care, that there was something else we needed to do. Are we clear on that one?
It's already, we changed it to another policy.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. It was redundant to that's number 5 from the earlier meeting. It
Yep.
will all sort itself out when both are in the policy together.
All right, excellent. Okay.
Yeah, so this is an opportunity if there were any edits. Otherwise, the recommendation from the administration is that we accept the MASC samples, and the person in our district that follows these policies, Ellen Faulkner, had endorsed both. So we're looking for a motion to approve the inclusion of JFABF and JFABE into our policy document.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you both. I'm doing them together. I hope that's okay. Are there any questions before I call the roll? I don't see any questions. Kim Coelho. Adding 2 policies. Yes. Ken-Ann McKenzie DeFranza.
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva.
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
Rachel Abel, yes. 6-0 with 1 absent.
Our next meeting date is on January 8th. Thank you.
January 8th. That would be our next regular school committee as well. I forgot to mention that before. And I sort of jumped the gun with negotiations by stating our date tomorrow of December 12th with Unit B. And then policy, have you had any meetings?
We do not have any meetings. I have not seen anything from MASC. I just will remind people that regardless of whether MASC sends us policy updates, we have our own policy that says we'll review all of our policies every 5 years. And so Queen Donna Bergeron manages a big old spreadsheet of all our policies, and she picks them out and sends them to the various subcommittees, or potentially to our committee of the whole, on an interval so that we'll get through all of them in our 5-year cycle. And so when you see a policy, it may have edits in it. Those edits might have come from MASC, they might have come from a subcommittee, or you might see a policy that has no edits. And those ones that have no edits is because it's time to get reviewed. So there are kind of 3 different buckets that maybe that helps. I think there's still some confusion about that. And if anybody wants to continue to look at the policy primer, one could only hope that someday I get to retire from being the chair of policy, and that primer hopefully will help other people. But I'll be the first person to say that it's probably not as well written as it needs to be yet, to be able to capture, so I don't have to keep trying to remind people how policy goes for those of us who haven't been on the committee for 8 or more years.
Okay. Thank you for that reminder. And perhaps, like we have our resident rep primer on our website, perhaps once we get the draft sufficiently updated, we can make it public as well. Be easier to find. Because I can't say I could put my finger on it right now. Okay. Thank you. Next agenda item is communications from school committee members. Are there any communications that school committee? No. With that, we'll move to our last item. This is an executive session, and the chair is making the motion to vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 3 and 1, and not to return to open session. Purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the Beverly Teachers Association Unit B, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. And purpose 1, to discuss reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual, and not to return to open session. Is there a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick. Mayor's absent. Kim Coelho. We're voting to meet in executive session. How do you vote? Yes. Thank you. Ken-Ann McKenzie DeFranza.
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva.
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
Rachel Abel. Yes. 6-0. The time is 9:01 p.m. and the chair restates that the school committee is now moving into executive session and will not return to open session. This is for purposes 3 and 1 under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A. 3, discuss strategy with respect to and preparation for collective bargaining with Beverly Teachers Association Unit B, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. And purpose 1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual, and not to return to open session. Thank you so much, BevCam. Thank you for those who joined us from home. Now would be the time to leave as we transition into executive session.